Today, finally in for review, is the new Christopher Ward C63 Sealander, and I have been waiting to review this watch for weeks. A few weeks ago on the regular show, the news show that we do, I got the pleasure to interview Mike France for a second time over at Christopher Ward, and he talked all about the release of this new Sealander range. So the Sealander is actually 3 watches. This happens to be the Auto, which I would say is more of a field watch inspired. Christopher Ward previous has been very much in that 42mm case range. This one is 39mm, so it's certainly in keeping with other field watches, but it's definitely something new for Christopher Ward, and I'm really interested to review this. But before we do that, let's get those all-important case measurements out the way. As mentioned before, it's got a 39mm case. We've got a height of 11.25mm, a lug-to-lug of 45.8mm, stainless steel case, sapphire crystal, water resistance to 150 meters, and as you can see from the thumbnail, this is the white version. It also comes in a black version. Christopher Ward kindly sent me this watch in for review about 2 weeks ago. This will be going back to them, so thank you for lending me this. They didn't send me a watch for this review, but they did send me a very snazzy pair of cardboard VR goggles. So big thanks to the marketing team over at Christopher Ward. Well, let's get to it. I am really impressed with what they've done here. This is a 39mm watch. They've completely re-engineered their cases. Now, one of the things that you might not know about Christopher Ward is they put a lot of design effort and engineering time into their cases. They don't buy off-the-shelf cases and then put their movements and dials in them. They go to an incredible amount of detail to recreate cases that they feel best fits their ethos. And this is exemplified by the super compressor watch that you can buy, where they completely redesigned a super compressor case. And it's one of the only super compressor watches, true super compressor watches, that's available on the market at the moment, and that's at a very reasonable price. This one retails for $825 on the bracelet, and I would implore you to get it on the bracelet, really. This leather strap is okay. I'm not crazy about it. It's very high quality. I just don't think it suits the watch. But my rule with these things is, even though I don't commonly wear watches on a bracelet, I always say get it on the bracelet because you can easily swap out the straps on here. This one happens to have quick release pins on it as well. The thing with this watch is it's going to look fantastic on whatever strap that you put it on. The case on these watches are always extremely high quality, the ones that I've reviewed. We've got a lovely brushing down the side. They call this the light catcher case, and they mean it because you've got these areas of very high polishing on the lugs, on the rim of the bezel here, and also as we transition to the back case. The lugs have a lovely slope to them, which makes it very wearable. The size for me, the way that the lugs are shaped, for my 7.2-inch wrist fits me perfectly. I've not been wearing it on this leather strap because this, I don't know if they're going to resell this watch, but I didn't want to crease up the leather strap for the next owner, so I've been wearing it on a NATO. Because it's got those quick release pins, very easy to swap the band out. You don't have to worry about scratching the lugs or anything like that. That can certainly be an issue if you're using traditional spring bars. The back of the case, we get a great view of that beautiful Sellita movement. The majority of Christopher Ward watches use Sellita movements. They do have some where they've created some in-house movements, but the majority of their movements are Sellita. And if you're not familiar with Sellita, they started off making clones of ETA movements, and they're now one of the largest manufacturers in Switzerland of movements. In fact, I believe they shipped over 1 million movements in 2019. Here, it's beautifully presented behind that sapphire crystal. We've got a rotor with the Christopher Ward logo on, and then their other logo, which is a combination of the British and the Swiss flag. We can also see that echoed across to the crown. Now, if you're not familiar with the English flag, if you're thinking the English flag is the Union Jack, well, the Union Jack is actually a composite flag of all of the United Kingdom. The middle section of it, the red section, is actually the English flag, and that's the cross that we can see on here. And then the other flag, the Swiss flag. And in fact, a lot of people much prefer that logo over just having the Christopher Ward name on there, but we'll get to that later. The crown is excellently finished. It's got a lovely grip to it. Screw down, we have 150 meters water resistance, even though it is a field watch. The crown guards, to me, I think echo maybe the Patek Nautilus. The bezel protecting the boxed sapphire crystal, which has got a beautiful bevel to it, is brushed. Brushing does hide scratches. They will show up eventually, but it's not as easy to scratch, or you can cover more sins with a brush bezel than you can with a very highly polished bezel. And that's why a lot of the areas on this case where it might come into contact or scratch easier, they have brushed those. And I think that's a nice touch. So around the lugs and around the sides where you would imagine that you might catch it or scratch it easier, those are brushed. Back case is also combination of brushed and polished. And I love what they've done here with the inlays for the case back tool. I like these elongated cutouts that they've left there. It looks very industrial and very unique. And as I mentioned before, they don't use off-the-shelf cases. These are all designed specifically for Christopher Ward watches. Moving round to the dial now. The dial is a true highlight. One of the things I love about Christopher Ward, the dials are very simple, but all of the elements come together. It's a real example of what you can do with simplicity of design. The dial itself catches the light beautifully, and it's the way that the indices are brushed and polished and raised. And then the Christopher Ward hands have a bevel down the side. So they have a polished bevel down the side and then a brush section. So as it captures the light, as you move the watch, it's a beautiful thing to see. The white version, I think it would probably be even more enhanced with the black dial version, but the white version for me, I think is the best version for this watch. Very high contrast. I was worried about whether the indices and the lume might blend into the dial. And as you can see from the lume shot, there's still a very nice contrast between the indices and the dial itself. The hour hand has the tip of the arrow that Christopher Ward use on multiple of their models. I've not seen this hand before on a watch, but it looks so sharp. It looks almost like a scalpel blade. And then the second hand is their trident, part of their design language, with a nice muted orange tip to the second hand, which we can also see echoed in the water rating. They've done an excellent job of the dial. The 6 o'clock date, which is something we've seen echoed on the new Zinn watches, is really in fashion at the moment, and I like the way they've placed this. The reason I like the way they placed this is we haven't lost or sacrificed a significant portion of the indice at 6 o'clock. You're still getting that lume to show you where the 6 o'clock is. They haven't sacrificed that indice for the date. They've proportioned it nicely. Now I'm going to get round to it. The Christopher Ward logo is probably one of the most divisive logos in the watch industry, I would say. I'm bound to get multiple comments on this video about the font that they use, the position of the text on the dial. Here it's positioned at 12 o'clock position, but they've done previous watches. The last one I reviewed, it was at the 9 o'clock position, which some people liked, some people didn't. Their old legacy logo was just C Ward, which was done in more of Old English font, which I personally wasn't a fan of, but it's probably one of the most divisive things on a Christopher Ward watch when you read the watch forums. And honestly, it's a shame, because if the logo, the text of the dial, if you can't live with it, you can't live with it. But it's not that obvious in person. And it would be honestly a shame to miss out on this watch, because the value for money here, this one, as I mentioned before, is $825. They often do an promotion where you can get either a $125 voucher or £100 in the UK, which brings this watch down to around the $700 mark, which for a custom case, sapphire crystal, excellently designed dial and hands, and then the Celita movement that they're using in there, the SW200, it's excellent value for money. This, I would say these cases and this attention to detail is on par with other watches I've reviewed. Breitling comes to mind. Some of the mid to higher range Swiss brands, this is well on par with in terms of the quality and the value for money. I think this position at the 12 o'clock is the best position that they've done it in. I think this looks the best for the logo. Anyway, enough about that. I'm really impressed with this watch. Out and about, wears really nicely. It wears nice on a NATO, nicely proportioned for my 7.2 inch wrist. I think they've done an excellent job of this. It's more important what you think, so let me know in the comments section down below, and I'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews. Thanks guys, bye.